Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our show today. My name is Tony K. Fretton, and today I'm with the founder of Soul Lounge Melbourne, Matcho Makata. It's great to have you with us, Matcho. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be here, Tony. Thanks for having me.
No, it's an honor to have you here. So for everyone watching, can you tell us a little bit about Soul Lounge Melbourne and how that all began and what's it all about?
Soul Lounge Melbourne is a poetry, spoken word, and storytelling event that's mainly a space for people of color. I guess it started when I moved here a year and a half ago. I noticed that there weren't enough safe spaces for people of color to come and share their stories, share their poetry without feeling uncomfortable. And I wanted to make a space that I wanted to make a community. I wanted to connect with more people of color, more minorities, and bring them in and give them a stage and somewhere where we can practice, elevate, and express. So we run events on the monthly all around Melbourne. Last night we had an event at Sunshine Social, which is in Sunshine, and it was really nice and vibey. The theme was speak or say a poem in your own language, which is very rare to have in a poetry movement in Australia.
I like that you're holding events and celebrating different languages and different cultures, especially in this art form. I would say art form, spoken word. Can you tell us a little bit about what spoken word is? How do you define that?
Spoken word is modern day poetry / performance poetry / having a conversation or speaking out what you need to say. And it's very different to page poetry, but you can perform page poetry there. You can just read a story. You can just tell us something that's scribbled in your notes that you feel deep down inside you needs to get out somewhere. And I think there is no real definition of it. I think a lot of spoken word stigma has been, or the idea of spoken word has been taken over by the idea of slam poetry, which is more competitive and more stylized, absorbed by American culture, but it's not really what incorporates or encapsulates spoken word itself. So spoken word is just you speaking your word in a way.
I was really lucky to have been part of, during lockdown, you had an online session, which was really great. And we had a few different people joining in via the online video conferencing. And it was really great to see different faces, different ages. And hearing some of their different poems, what was the thing for you that made you say, hey, spoken word is my thing. This is something I want to get into a little bit more.
I guess, jumping in random rap ciphers with my friends. And then one of my friends just said, your style is spoken word, man. And I was like, what is that? And then he took me to an event and I got up on stage and I performed, and it was nerve-wracking, anxiety-filled, but also empowering. And I spoke something, and then people were like, "Oh, that was good. You should write though." And so I started writing, and then I started going to different events. And the place I felt most comfortable was Soul Lounge Adelaide, which is in Ghana country, and it just made me feel like I belonged there. Where a lot of other places was oh, okay, you do your thing, you get off, cool. But there, it was a whole embracive, welcoming vibe, and I wanted to keep that going. So when the founder of Soul Lounge Adelaide stopped doing it, and she moved away, she offered me this idea of me running it. So I ran Soul Lounge Adelaide for 5 years, and there was a lot of growth. There was a lot of political problems. There was a lot of hardships. There was a lot of development in myself to be a community leader. And I think that's, you didn't see how much work there is behind the scenes to create something that's for the people, and to create something that's safe, and to understand why there needs to be trigger warnings or content warnings, why there needs to be a sort of a housekeeping kind of guide to what we can do, what we can perform, and how to respond when there is like a chaotic situation. I feel like I'm still learning that, and I think I'm learning it more and more. I'm trying to be the best I can be.
For people that are at home who've never been to an event, walk us through, what does it actually look like? What does a spoken word event look like, feel like? How does it all work?
So a spoken word event would feel like you come to a place. There's sometimes an open mic section where you can write your name down and you can go up. Sometimes there's a break, and then there's a main feature, so a feature artist that has been like really like highlighted in the community, whether it's through publications, whether it's through performances, whether it's through just them creating such of a reputation for themselves that they need to be plateaued into that platform. So for Soul Lounge, we try and find POC venues, or venues that have like a good vibe within different communities. So we've done an event at Footscray in Jumbo, which was just very like vibrant. It's just very heartwarming. So there's food, there's drinks, there's people to meet. We have conversations in between the breaks, and we get to know each other. We get to say, last night we were at Sunshine Social and we were just saying hello to everybody in our own language, which was a cool kind of thing that I've never really experienced here. Because like, I don't know, there's so much acceptance and diversity in Australia, but it's like, it's not really practiced. And it's like, we do this and we respect you, but like deep down behind the scenes, it's like, okay, cool, you do your thing over there. But it's like, it's never embraced in like a public light. So we're trying to bring that out a bit more. We've also done events at Cafe Gomo in Thornbury. What I'm trying to do for Soul Lounge Melbourne is I'm trying to like highlight artists, especially POC artists that aren't given the stage as much, but also to discover people that have always wanted to say poems, to be able to like go up and like say their stuff. I think we had 2 people that never shared poetry ever in their lives, and they got up to the mic, and that was beautiful. And like their poetry was like super like profound, empowering. It was fire. It was like, oh, how come you've never shared this? And it's because they've never had the space, because it's kind of, you know, like triggering to white people, or it's kind of insightful in another way. You know, it's kind of the stuff that you really want to hear, the stuff that you really want to say, but you're not sure if you're allowed to say it. Also at our events, when we draw up our open mic board, we have like your name, you can write it down, you can write your pronouns down so nobody misgenders you. And then we've got like a little camera, like yes or no, so if you're okay with taking pictures. So it's very like, I guess like we're trying to be as cautious and like considerate as possible to anyone that just wants to jump up, whether they, you know, want to like feel like people see them as who they are, or whether they aren't sure about having their photos taken or not. And it's like, sometimes you just want to do your thing without people having their phones on you or flash photography, and that's fine. Like, it's cool to just be at an event and not have to worry about that anxiety, and then just go.
It would be really good if a lot more event organizers did that. Like I'd feel really welcome and feel safe to share. Now, I know Soul Lounge Melbourne, you do some other projects. You've done workshops and different things like that, which have been really amazing. And I guess developing new spoken word talent. What are some of the good stories you've had from there? What are some things you could share with us?
We've done a few workshops. We've recently done a workshop at St. Albans Community Centre, the Bowery Theatre. Thanks to Brimbank City Council, we got some kids in there, and we sort of shared some stuff. I think the most profound thing I've had is there was this thing that we were doing online that we were giving people prompts for, which we called the Wordy 30, which was inspired by the Dirty 30, which is like another Melbourne kind of poetry thing. But we were putting out like prompts that were more for like POC engagement, to like write about your story, to write about more diversity, whether it was like the struggle, whether it was the beauty, whether it was like missing something or feeling something or saying something. And there was this prompt that was like, they always say ... So there was this Muslim girl that was like just going with our stuff for a bit, and she wrote this fire poem about how they always say that her hijab is like suffocating, and then she like wrote this really empowering piece, and then from there she put a book together, and yeah, it was just good to see like her confidence grow, and like her to be able to like be published and sell a lot of books. So we're trying to do, I guess, more inspiring stuff like that. I think what I'm focused on is like helping more POC artists perform and be more confident on stage, whether it's like to meet up with them one-on-one and sort of work through their words, work through their poetry, make them feel more comfortable, go to like an outside space where anyone can like walk past and just say their poem, and then they're like nervous, and then they get into it, and then when they're on the stage, they're just like, this is nothing, because they did it on the street. Back in Adelaide, we did this really big production, which was a development of 8 of us, eight POC artists that came together and just kind of like told their story, wrote their story about their journey. And it didn't have to do with like moving to Australia or racism, but somebody had that story, somebody had this story, somebody had a story about anxiety, somebody had a story about loneliness and like identity, in a way where it's like, we're all very different people, and this is who I am. There will never be another you or another me. So it's very conceptual. And we put this show together at Tandanya Theatre, which was a 160-seated theatre, and we sold out twice. So we developed a theatre play from the basis of poetry, and we sold out more than we thought we could. I'm gonna try and create something here with a few of the other artists that have been a part of the Soul Lounge community, and I guess I'm gonna try and see if I can get a stage, get a venue, get a place that we can really like go into our own journeys, write, do some dramaturgy, and perform, and really put ourselves out there and get our stories told.
I love that, starting from just having an event and that being inclusive and including pronouns and that sort of thing, and then sort of mentoring younger people. How have you found working with younger people who are like, okay, look, I want to speak about my gender or my sexuality in that sort of way? Has that ever been? Have you had to approach that differently, or what are some things you think has been working well?
It's really hard to keep young people safe, especially like trans kids that are coming out and figuring out who they are, and especially being around different ethnic cultures that have been colonized to think in these sort of ways of like gender normative ideas that really have us relearning something that we would have known ages ago before colonization and before all those ideas came through. So sometimes when somebody's misgendered, we try and correct them. We say they go by they, them. You mean him, right? Like, we've got all that, but then it's like, I'm not sure if like it's an 100% safe space at all times, and you can never be sure unless you're always there. We try and low-key feature more people that they have some stuff to share, that they're comfortable with doing that, but there's no pressure on that. I don't want to say anyone's name, but there was a poet that has featured recently, and one of my favorite poems of this person is about being a little spoon, and I was like, oh, I really want to hear this poem, but I'm not sure if it will like connect with the crowd. Like, I don't know if like they would be comfortable with this poem projected, because I don't know, like you don't know how other people feel, and it's just like, I think some people will share their poems about sexuality and where they're at with who they are, and it'll be a very safe space. It'll be very like, oh, cool, that's all right, and there's no rejection of that. There's no discrimination. There's no like, it's just like, okay, that was good. I'm glad you were comfortable to do that. And sometimes it's a very vulnerable position to say things that are that might make you a target. So we don't necessarily encourage people to be like, hey, do that poem because we loved it, but we tell them do whatever you want and where you're comfortable at. And if you don't want to perform, that's fine. Like it's good to just sit in a place and just listen to poetry. And we need more people, to be honest, to just come and just sit down and have a drink, have some food, and just like absorb the words.
I love that. I love how you talk about where at the comfort level of the individual or the spoken word artist. And I guess when you're talking about poetry and you say, look, talk about anything, there'll be some really hard hitting topics, right? Like they'll be really deep. Is there any poem that you've heard and you're thinking, that's too much, or that's too hard hitting, or stop, get off the mic?
Not in a like emotional way or in like when somebody is talking about their own self, but when there was one person in Adelaide that did do a performance where she was talking about the racial discrimination she had, but she was constantly saying the slur and it wasn't appropriate, and we had to sit down with her and talk about what she was doing and if it had any context, and I think it was a real hard time, and it's something where you have to stop it straight away, or if you let it go, because this person was very fair skinned, their background is not African, and they just kind of were looking at every black person in there, and they were trying, and I think it was like a kind of way where they're trying to like bait people, and it's like you as an organizer, you have to have ways to like instantly react to people that are trying to take the stage from people of color or trying to say something that can be triggering to other people, and you really need to like protect your community. And it's hard to engage with that. It's because everybody is sensitive to a certain thing, and you have to understand that there are triggers, and that's why there needs to be trigger warnings. Plus, you need to just be careful of like the outside crowd of the community that just want to take the stage and not really develop it. And I wish there was like a path, or there were like mentors that really could like tell us how do you control situations of chaos with like racial discrimination, or homophobia, or like anything that's like transphobic, or how do you deal with that? Like where do we go for those problems where like a lot of the stuff we see is for the majority of people rather than the minorities?
It reinforces, I guess, the need for these kind of spaces, the need for these kind of organizations and projects and things like that ongoing. Now, looking at the future, I know you mentioned a few different things you're looking forward to. What are some collaborations or things you'd like to happen in the future?
I would like to have more of a network around Australia. So we've got a good ground base in Ghana country with Soul Lounge Adelaide, and it would be nice to do a collaboration with them at some point, but to also bridge the gap, go to like Perth, do a few events there, and maybe make a nationwide Soul Lounge. But for now, it's all about building the community here and making sure that we can like sort of engage with other communities. So we've been talking to Griffin Speak about doing a collaboration potentially.
What's Griffin Speak?
Griffin Speak is another poetry event movement that is more for diversity, more for like BIPOC artists to come forth. But we're also doing a lot of stuff, and a lot of our same crowd is going to Cubby Art, which is at Murmur Library, and that's a really cool safe space for everyone. So
what have been some barriers in your field or in, I guess, spoken word? What are some things that are holding you back?
Our biggest barriers are finding funding where we don't have funding, like trying to find grants in different areas, and trying to figure out where the next steps are, where we can get community. So one of the biggest issues is that, you know, we'll try and do an event in Thornbury, and we have such a community there. We've got like a lot of people that can easily make it to our venue there, but then we don't have any grants available through that area, and there's nothing to apply for there for another year. So like, how do we pay artists there without charging a door fee? How do we manage making a space where the people that we want to put up on the stage can be really practicing and engaging their time and be rewarded for that? Because a lot of poets will take their day off work or a night off work, or, you know, take their time out to like rehearse, to like figure out what their set is, to figure out how they're going to perform it, to test it out. And there's so much time in there where when they get on stage for their like 20-minute set, it's like there's so much practice and anticipation and work they've done to like to write, to practice, to memorize, to figure out, to like really promote themselves as well. Like there's so much in there, and they really deserve like an artist fee. So we haven't had feature artists at that venue because of that reason. And it's just been more of a community open mic space where we've got funding in Brimbank, which is really nice. So thanks to Brimbank City Council. So we've got a lot of opportunity to be there, but it's hard to outreach to the community of Sunshine, especially because I'm not, I'll go there and I'll put up posters, and I'll meet people, but I don't really know anybody there. So I'll try and connect with different like venues, different restaurants, and Sunshine Social was really nice to us. But we were able to get like a small intimate crowd, but it's so hard for everybody out in the East to like come down to there to see our events. But it also was a challenge. I take it as a challenge. Is like, we can go over here, try and like we'll try and light the fire here. We'll try and bring some community, try and find out who's here. And from that little event, like there's 3 people that came that wouldn't have been to another event on the East. So we're trying to do a little event over here and in Thornbury, and then a lot of people come. We'll do an event in Footscray and see who like, you know, is walking around in the area, and they'll walk in the restaurant. Sometimes we'll do an event and the restaurant will be full, and we'll be like, okay, we were booked to have an event in here. Sorry to spoil your dinner. And we're very nervous about it, and people will just go through the event as chaotic as it is, and people are eating their dinner, watching us, and at the end, we're like, oh, okay, we're so sorry for this. And then people will be like, oh, thank you for sharing your stories. And it'll be like very positive, and everybody will be like, oh, cool. And in a way, it is free entertainment for whoever is in the restaurant at the time. So
I'm really, really grateful for your time that you've come to share with us. And we're really, really excited for, I guess, the development for more spaces for people of color, but not only that, our queer and our trans family. Please, well, as Matcho said, come share a poem, come share a story. The more stories that are told about our communities, you know, the better. And I thank you, and I thank the whole team of Soul Lounge Melbourne. Now, we've got a little performance from you. You want to share a piece with us today. I'm really, really excited. Tell us a little bit about the piece, and then we'll get you to stand up and do that.
Okay, so the piece is a piece I wrote for my community in Adelaide, and ultimately it's for everyone that's a POC artist, and it's just my way of like really like wanting to absorb more knowledge, more. It's for me to really want people to approach the stage that are a minority, that are a person that are or identify as a person of color, that have a background and they're scared, and it's for me to like go against the grain and be like, I want to hear you, like I want to hear what you have to say rather than what like somebody else is saying, because it's like a lot of the time we're put down and our poems are like not seen as good as they should be seen, and it's because of ignorance. So I want to fight that ignorance, and I want you to say your piece.
Well, I'm excited for that piece. And before we jump into your piece, how do people get connected to Soul Lounge Melbourne?
Just hit us up on the Instagram or Facebook page at Soul Lounge Melbourne.
Thank you so much, Matcho. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Tony. I want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem about everything I don't know. I want to hear a poem that's not just for show. I want to hear a poem that will make me feel something new, make me understand another's culture, another country's truths. I want to hear a poem about who you are deep inside. I want to know about your heritage, where your traditions lie. I don't want to hear the sweet, blissful whistles. I want to hear about the war-torn struggles, the bombs and the pistols. I want you to take me where everyone is afraid to go. I want you to show me what it is you call home. I want to feel the pain in your voice, deliver to many strangers that have no idea of having no choice. I want to hear you scream in anguish at the subtle scenes of your life and how when you came here, everything was different, but that doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's white. It doesn't mean things are all dandy, mate. Hello? Goodbye. I want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem that makes you stand up to the comfortable, makes you reach those uncomfortable and makes them feel lovable. I want to hear a poem about heartbreaks between traditions of countries, between provinces that are suffering and those that are hungry, about how love is expensive except to those with money. I want to hear a poem that will make these people feel something. I want to hear a poem that will open the eyes of those around through the eardrums of the sound of your voice being proud, of the dirt roads that you've stepped from, of the hecklers you've been stepped on, of those that don't know how things go on the other side of the spectrum. I want to hear a poem about how everyone thinks you got it, how you can't pay your rent, find a job, but everyone thinks you're so exotic. I want to hear a poem. So if you got something cultured, something inspiring, something global, if you got something insightful, something you think you can rock the mic to, something that you think may make others not like you because it's so hard to speak the damn truth, I want to hear you. I want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem that brings fear to the corrupt, that shows the ingenuity of loss, that shows the struggle of a girl of color and everything they suffer. I want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem that's intellectually stimulating but culturally invigorating and almost insinuating or saying something deep that even the streets get scared when they hear you read. I want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem from someone indigenous about how having no privilege gets you from being a witness to taking you to prison, and when you speak in native tongue, nobody listens. I want to hear a poem. I want to hear a poem that examines the struggles of an Asian family bargaining their eldest daughter for a chance to get through the hell before them, to a wealthier donor who's looking for love in a place full of trauma. To bring her in here, of course she's all for it. Everything works out in two newborns who barely know who they are because of the way Australia laughs at cultural ways that are astray from here. Because they accept diversity, but these tongues that are not clear, these ones they fear. Oh wait, that's how I got here. I want to hear a poem about identity, and how it's like a butterfly, so easy to picture floating by, but so hard to define, so hard to capture, and even harder to dissect. And I know they haven't captured it yet, but it feels like they've opened up my chest, and I don't know what they've put in here to replace. But now when I look inside myself, it doesn't feel the same. So tell me a poem that will make me shake what they've replaced, make me feel more awake to the troubles I haven't had to face. I want to hear a poem.